Hello, my name is Farah and I work in the advocacy team at the Carbon Literacy Project. You may already know a little bit about what we do, and we've already spotlighted one of the organisations that works with the financial services to provide carbon literacy training. In this video today, I'm joined by Nikhita Mistry, who is the Sustainability Executive at Palatine, and I'm really excited to find out the training that they've rolled out to date and how it's landed for them. So without further ado, let's begin. The first question for you, Nikhita, today, and again, thanks so much for being here. Perhaps you can just kind of give us some context about the carbon literacy training that you offer.
Sure, thank you for having me. So we were actually the first private equity house in the world to offer carbon literacy training to members of our staff and our portfolio, fact that we're really proud of. We did this because, like the Carbon Literacy Project, we believe that education is key to creating the societal shift that we need to build that low carbon economy. And it's really easy to either expect that tech alone is going to solve our problems, or as a sustainability professional, exist in your own echo chamber and assume that everyone is as passionate about halting climate change as you are. But in reality, most people care about doing the right thing, but there's just more pressing issues. So especially true for leaders in our portfolio. It's not easy to be backed by private equity. So climate action, or taking the time to understand what that means, can slip. And that is why we have made sure that it doesn't, really. So a key pillar of our sustainability strategy is climate action and decarbonisation. And so back in 2021, we committed to having a 100% carbon literate portfolio. We've defined that commitment as 100% of our portfolio meeting the basic criteria of the bronze level carbon literate organisation standard. So at a minimum, we train one C-suite and then one other senior leader in the business in carbon literacy for every company that we invest in. But in reality, it's so much more than this, because at least 14 companies currently have opted to train more than 2 people. And we target at the portfolio because the portfolio is where we make our biggest impact. But we've not stopped there. Building on the carbon literacy's own kind of scale of impact, we have extended the training to our network as well. And we've trained over 50 of our own investors, lawyers, advisors, and other people in our network, as well as our staff and portfolio members.
That is so impressive to hear about the kind of way that it's been rolled out and the breadth and depth of it. So yeah, really, really exciting. Thanks so much for that, Nikhita. I suppose my next question is kind of around the training itself, and kind of how the training is delivered. Could you perhaps talk a little bit about that for us?
Sure. So we developed the training a couple of years ago now with Anthesis, who are a sustainability consultancy and activator, a global activator. So they developed the materials for us, and then our internal sustainability team here at Palatine, which is myself and Sustainability Director Stephanie Wall, we run 2 half-day training sessions to kind of cover that full day's worth of training. The training that we do is completely virtual, and we've noticed that this delivery really suits the delegates who attend. It's a lot easier for people to commit to, and people can join from wherever works for them. So we've had people join from continental Europe before. So reducing the carbon emissions there from mandating any kind of in-person delivery. Even though it's online, we keep the sessions really interactive. So we use Mentimeter, which is like an interactive presentation software, and we also use Padlet, like a virtual whiteboard. And then all the training is done in Teams, so we use the breakout room facility in there. And that's really where some of the best work happens. People get to share their ideas across the portfolio and often get most inspired when they kind of see what people in similar positions are doing in their own businesses. And then, you know, when myself and Steph are on the call, we can develop those ideas further on and offline, share pieces of knowledge from previous sessions as well, and other kind of best practice. So those 2 half-day sessions are really inspiring, and we get a lot out of them, really useful.
Yeah, it's really nice that you kind of talk about the training in terms of how you've catered it for you and the culture of your clients as well. And I think that's really important. And having that collaborative and interactive piece, I think, is key, really, isn't it, to an engaging piece of training of this kind. So yeah, really interesting. And then I suppose just talking about what the responses have been so far, maybe you can kind of give an example of some of the pledges that have led to changes in behaviour, some of the participants that have attended, or, you know, in your opinion, kind of an expert in this area, why is this kind of training important? So there's 2 questions really, talking a bit about the pledges, but also about this kind of climate education training for private equity.
Sure. So really proud to say we've now trained 256 people in carbon literacy. And so across our portfolio and wider network. And every time we get really amazing responses, and great feedback, with delegates saying how informative and how useful the training is. And we know this not only because we get that feedback, but also because as more people across the portfolio are trained in carbon literacy, see the value of that training, they become advocates for it within their own organizations, and nominate more people from their own organizations to be trained. So an example of this is The Alchemist, the experimental bar and restaurant chain that's within our portfolio, who have trained their full team of 11 greenkeepers in carbon literacy off the back of the training. As we should have said earlier, we do the training twice a year. So every 6 months we offer it, and the people in the portfolio kind of expect that and know that, and will sign people up to it. Another great example of this was CTS. So we actually exited them from our portfolio late last year, but not before we'd managed to train a substantial amount of people in carbon literacy. So the same thing happened after attending the first round of training. They proceeded to train an entire kind of ESG working group that got to about 12 people across the business. And then they, on the back of kind of those attendees, CTS committed to the pledge to net zero. So that's a pledge that requires signatories to develop science-based targets aligned to the UK government's net zero target and the aims of the Paris Agreement. So that's kind of a nice outcome that we've seen off the back of that. We've also done some work kind of tracking these outcomes, because as you said, when people go through the training, they make a pledge, and then we can see kind of how that progresses. Another really great success story for us is the Italian restaurant chain Gusto, who made some amazingly impactful changes. One of them being they switched their beef supplier from Argentinian reared beef to UK reared beef, off the back of learning that the average beef from South America results in 3 times the amount of greenhouse gas emissions than European reared beef. And that was in the training. So that was directly off the back of that. Another great example is that they made their pension provider a sustainable one for all of their employees, saving approximately 19 tons of CO2 equivalent per pension per year. Another example on a completely different kind of type of business is Fornet. So they're experts in digital transformation, and following the training, they started by baselining their carbon footprint. That's one of the things that the training kind of talks about, is the importance of data, and not just the importance of it, but how to do it. And then the team were able to do that internally at Fornet, publicly report it and publicly commit to reducing it. So it's great to see that level of accountability from Fornet as well. Honestly, the list goes on, but I think they're some of our favourites. That just demonstrates how important that is for the financial sector and for companies like Palatine to be rolling this out, because we can get in touch with and inspire and teach people from all of these different industries that can do these amazing things within their own businesses. And that's really unique, I think, to this
You're
sector.
reaching such a depth and breadth of organisations. So that's, yeah, super impressive and really good to hear from our side at the Carbon Literacy Project as well. So thanks so much detail that you covered there. I suppose it's also about, you know, you've shared so many of the success stories and the highlights there. But I suppose sharing any more kind of or anecdotes that highlight the positive impact of carbon literacy training on different businesses and perhaps the further uptake of training. I know you've gone through that in a bit of detail, but yeah, anything else that you can elaborate on that?
I think if I was to elaborate kind of beyond just our portfolio, we've seen not only the positive outcomes there, but we've also started to see carbon literacy take off in our sector, which is amazing. Not giving Palatine credit, but we talk about it a lot. So it would be, you know, if that's an impact as well from the amount that we kind of praise the Carbon Literacy Project and talk about it. We've seen another Manchester private equity house become a carbon literate organisation themselves, and so kind of seeing that ripple effect from just talking about the project and the impacts of it and the impact that it's had in our portfolio is amazing. Similarly, again, you know, by training our LPs, we hope to see that kind of cascading throughout their other investments as well. So I think anecdotally on that point from our sector, it's great to see those ripple effects happening.
And that's kind of what we need and where we need to be really in terms of like the next stages of reaching our net zero goals. So that's amazing. And I suppose just the last question really, can you kind of describe any more courses that you've got on the horizon?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we collaborated with Anthesis to pull together this training. We then created a follow-on training session. It was this time last year in 2022. And that session was designed to use the Carbon Literacy Foundation and then teach leaders across the business how to set meaning carbon reduction plans to reduce those emissions. So that was very action focused training again, and kind of looked at how delegates can draw on carbon reduction levers within their businesses. After that training, we've had some follow-on sessions where carbon experts from Anthesis worked with our portfolio companies to progress those reduction plans and make them more meaningful. And again, this was really, really well received. But with everything carbon reduction, it's a journey. So we're continuing to make resources available to our portfolio in an effort to make science-based carbon reduction a reality in the businesses that we back. And so that will mean more training like the training we delivered last year, more sharing of resources, but carbon literacy training is definitely the foundation of this programme as well. So we think it's the perfect point to start to understand the problem and ignite action, on the back of which we can start to work with the companies more in the lights of training that I've just described. And hopefully to get them to set science-based carbon reduction targets. So we're already collecting names for our next session in April 2024, which we're looking forward to again.
Yeah, that's so great. And it's again, it's really in depth, the information that you've provided and what Palatine have done today. So we are super excited and really happy to have kind of got a really in-depth picture of how you've been delivering and what that looks like for you, and particularly again the kind of voice and the influence that you have in this sector. So thank you so much for your time today, Nikhita, and we very much look forward to hearing and seeing more of your carbon literacy training in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, as do I.